Hi, I'm Irving. You have just entered Cartertopia. We're at an Air Force base somewhere, watching a couple who are obviously very fond of each other kill some time until they both have to get back to work.
I've got a new photojournalist coming in this morning. Sergeant Diana Prince. She must be good. Transfer from the Pentagon, no less.
Well, in that case, it won't do for you to be late. Set a bad example.
I think I'll tell her that I was unavoidably detained by the most attractive man in the United States Air Force.
Sergeant Diana Prince, eh? A new undercover assignment for her. I wonder what she's looking for. Just then, the most attractive man in the military gets paged.
Major Cornell.
Mary had a little lamb.
Its fleece was white as snow.
Is the snow falling, Major?
The snow is falling. The snow is falling.
Good. Here are your instructions.
For some reason, we seem to be stuck on stories about mind control. Major Cordell starts acting like a zombie, hops in a jeep, and takes off without a word to his fiancée.
Staff Sergeant Prince, Diana, reporting for duty, sir.
Your orders, Sergeant? A photojournalist, Sergeant Prince.
Yes, sir.
You're assigned to the Public Information Office. Were you informed this base is on yellow alert?
Yes, I was, sir.
This guy is your typical second lieutenant, which is the lowest rank of officer there is. I don't know about the other branches, but when I was in the Army, a second lieutenant was known as a shavetail. He or she was at the bottom of a whole new pecking order, but since they were an officer, they never missed a chance to try and lord it over someone of lower rank. I experienced this personally, and I don't know of any second lieutenant that I ever saw or heard about who had a clue that people were laughing behind their backs every time they did that.
And since you're a new arrival, let me give you a word of warning. Yellow alert on this base means security comes first. Remember that when you go about your duties.
Yes, sir.
Captain Colby's office is the first door on the left. I suggest you report there at once.
That expression says everything. Diana heads to the office in question. There's nobody around, so the new photographer quietly slips into the darkroom and turns on the warning light to let people know not to come in without knocking.
This is Catamaran. Come in.
This is Collector. Are you safely at anchor?
Affirmative, awaiting instructions.
Rogers, switch to IADC Scrambler Channel 110. All further transmissions on that channel.
In case you can't tell, that's Steve in the jet. He's on his way to the base where Diana is. Cordell is trying to listen in, but on the Scrambler channel all he can hear is garble. Steve explains the mission.
As you know, San Remo is the hub of a vital defense region. I've had agents working undercover at all the 3 other regional bases, Norris, McKinley, and Lansdale. They've all reported incidents of sabotage activity.
But doesn't it strike you a little curious that San Remo's been left untouched?
It sure does. That's why you're there now.
The suspicion is that this base is next. Diana is there to find out if it is, and if so, find out who's doing it and how to stop them. To that end, she has a top-secret security clearance that allows her to go anywhere she wants to on the base.
We both know that our whole national space effort rests with the success of the Z-400. With the test flight scheduled for tomorrow, Washington to San Remo, our security performance becomes very critical.
The security and progress of the American space program in the 70s did not rest on any one aircraft or object or person. It was diversified and there were several projects going at once, and this is exactly the reason. If the whole program depends on one project and said project fails, where does that leave us? NASA was and is smarter than that. Between that and going back to mind control again, this episode's starting to lose me. Cordell can't unscramble the conversation, but he does manage to pinpoint the location of the unauthorized transmission. Word of it gets to our favorite shavetail.
What are you doing in there, Sergeant?
I was loading my camera, sir.
I heard voices.
Voices?
Yes.
Well, that must have been me, singing. I think of some new words for song or something.
There are regulations covering insubordination, Sergeant, and it's not unknown for a girl to wind up in the guardhouse.
That lady who just walked in, that's Captain Colby, the person Diana's been waiting for.
Checking the security of your section.
Well, it sounded more to me like you were pulling rank, Lieutenant. You just had a long trip.
Yes, I have.
Oh, well, welcome to the San Remo Public Information Office, Sergeant Prince.
Thank you.
I think you can go now, Lieutenant. Just one moment.
I'm not done embarrassing you in front of the lady sergeant yet.
You see these tracks on my shoulder? That shows that I'm a captain and you're a second lieutenant. I think you'd better learn to recognize the difference, Lieutenant.
That's not going to leave any hard feelings. Definitely not.
I got you a room at the NCO quarters, and your first assignment should be a lot of fun. The Hull City Howlers, the rock group, are performing at the base tonight, and you'll be covering their arrival and the concert.
While she heads out to meet the tour bus and take some pictures, Major Cordell is making a call.
I picked up an unauthorized transmission. Before it was scrambled, the IADC was mentioned.
IADC? Did you decode any of the transmission?
No, but I did pinpoint the receiver.
Take a look at your visitor with the camera. It's her. Her name is Diana Prince.
The guy pulling the strings is on the bus with the rock group?
Now you will wake up and not remember any conversation since this morning.
Diana finishes up with the group and heads inside where they'll be setting up and playing. But guess who's been following her around?
I suppose you thought that little scene in Public Information was pretty funny.
No, sir, I didn't.
And you've been given a top-level clearance? Gives you the run of the base? Unusual for a newly arrived sergeant, isn't it?
Why don't you ask Captain Colby about that, sir?
If he knew who she really is and the authority she has, he'd go hide under his desk. A top-level IADC agent could get him transferred to the North Pole. The bad guy raises his periscope. You heard me.
Harmless-looking little sergeant. And she's very pretty. It's almost a pity you'll have to kill her.
Such a pity, since good-looking people are so much more important than the rest of us.
Sergeant! Sergeant Prince! There's something in here you should have a picture of.
Lieutenant?
Sorry to disappoint you, Sergeant.
Now, how do you expect her to get a picture of that bullet when it's moving so fast? She ducks around a corner where he can't see her. She sneaks back into the hangar and makes her way to the top of one of those enormous planes. Why did she run off instead of securing him? He retreats out an emergency door while Wonder Woman deals with the other guy. Maybe now she can get some answers.
When the snow falls, I must obey.
When the snow falls? What are you talking about? It must be 80 degrees outside. Where do you get your weather reports?
When the snow falls, I must obey.
Or not. She doesn't notice that he's talking like someone who's not in control of himself. She and Steve have already dealt with mind control subjects more than once. You'd think she'd recognize it by now. Steve lands and she fills him in by scrambled radio. Cordell is still tracking her signal. She says, what if the purpose of the other sabotages was to force the new plane to come here? What if this is where they plan to destroy the project? Just then, Captain Colby arrives and Diana has to hang up. These guys aren't bad. The captain introduces Major Alan Cornell, her fiancé. Diana wants to get a picture of the two of them together. He turns around and leaves without a backward glance.
Was it something I said?
Captain Colby goes to look for him while Diana settles in to wait.
snow falls, I must obey.
Before she can ponder it more, she's interrupted.
Perhaps you might find one of these useful, Sergeant.
Thank you.
Of course, the photography might not be up to your standard.
It's just fine, Mr.
Dante, Edmund Dante. I'm the group's manager.
That explains why he was on the bus. It doesn't explain the periscope. He passes her off to Mitch, the leader of the band. He immediately starts raving about how pretty Diana is. She brushes it off.
Listen, we've played all the bases around. Norris, McKinley, Lansdale, you name it.
You have played all those bases?
Uh-huh. Oh, we've done more traveling in the last couple of weeks than most bands do in a year.
Who decides which bases you play and when?
Edmund Dante, the guy you just met. He sets up everything for us.
Now for the big question. When were they at those bases, and does the time correlate to when the sabotages occurred? Meanwhile, Dante is caught up with Cornell, and since he's already primed, he gives him an assignment.
What happened?
It's Major Cornell, sir, had us locked up in the back room. I tried to stop him again when he came back out. Sir, he's got enough explosives on him to blow up the whole base.
Diana transforms and heads out after the guards.
Major, I want your hands in the air! Back away from that detonator or I'll shoot!
Time? Get your men out of here, we'll all go together.
We have a bit of a standoff, except Wonder Woman's coming in the back door.
Cover me!
He then steps up to Wonder Woman and says, "I'm guilty of all charges," even though there haven't been any charges yet.
Why would the chief communications officer want to destroy the communications tower?
When the snow falls, I must obey.
I've heard that litany before from someone who sounded just like you.
Hey, she actually learned something from the previous encounter. What a concept.
I think I know a way to snap you out of it.
What's going on? The last thing I remember, what's happening?
I'll tell you what's happening, Major. We're placing you under arrest.
Captain Colby is beside herself. The man she knows and loves wouldn't do something like that voluntarily.
What makes you think that it was a form of hypnotism?
Because Major Cornell seemed to be in some kind of trance, just like the airman who tried to take me out in the hangar. The sound of a bell seemed to snap him out of it.
I'm sure there's no reason he'll need to know that.
I know that rock group fits in this puzzle somewhere.
Yeah, well, their manager's fingerprints on that picture are being checked in Washington right now.
It's something else. Check out the dates the rock group played the other bases.
If they were there when the sabotage occurred, it'd be more than a coincidence.
We're checking the concert dates and checking Dante's fingerprints. The Z-400 test can't be postponed. It's already left the mother ship. Apparently, it's a lot like the X-class aircraft that didn't have the capability to take off on their own and had to be dropped from another plane to get the ramjet going. Meanwhile, our favorite lieutenant got a report of someone prowling around the rec hall. Turns out it's Dante.
To the left. Yes. That's good. It's absolutely perfect.
Excuse me, that's annoying. Do you want my help or not? Oh, come on. That's all it takes to mesmerize this guy? 10 hits on a cymbal? We know he's a little light in the intellect department, but really?
Your help is invaluable.
My help is invaluable.
I've gone under hypnosis before. First, you have to be willing. Second, it takes a lot longer than that. Third, it requires concentration on the subject's part. We don't have any of those factors here, so there's no reason any of that should have affected Lieutenant Shavetail's mind. I think if I'd been in his place, I would have told Dante to either pick a beat or quit trying to play.
They wouldn't even let me see him. They said they can't afford to take any chances with the lapdog missiles on the base. Someone in Alan's mental state.
A lapdog missile?
Well, we're the only base in the region that has them. They're the newest heat-seeking missiles.
While Dante is programming the lieutenant to take out Steve Trevor, Steve is giving Diana an update.
Yeah, well, you called it, Diana. The Hull City Howlers were on each of the bases on the days the sabotage occurred.
What a surprise. Mitch even named them in the order they were sabotaged. The real question is, why didn't anybody notice this correlation before?
What about the fingerprints on that picture their manager gave me?
Yeah, they matched the prints of one Otto Franz. Now, the only
Person that I can recall with that name was a NATO colonel in Europe who stole a prototype defense aircraft. During the process, the plane was destroyed, and I thought that both he and the pilot died in the crash.
I remember that case. There's something else about Colonel Franz. He's an expert in mesmerism.
Of course he is, which means he can... I don't know what it means. He knows lots of ways of controlling people's minds, I guess. If he can do it with a cymbal and a drumstick, he must be pretty good. They agree to meet at the service club in 15 minutes to talk more. Steve has to sign off because someone's at the door.
Lieutenant Colonel Trevor?
Yes.
A matter requiring your immediate attention has arisen. It concerns the flight of the Z-400.
What happened?
If you would come with me, please, sir.
Please ignore the fact that I talk like a badly built robot. I have a speech impediment.
Ah, welcome, Lieutenant Colonel. Oh, perhaps I should say, welcome IADC agent Steve Trevor.
Dante explains that an Eastern European country is paying him a lot of money to destroy the X-400. He makes Steve sit down and goes to work on him. It's 8 o'clock. Get up. You're late for school. Steve doesn't have to look at that thing. He can look at Dante. He can look at his lap. He can look at his wall. He can look away, Dixieland. I guess he doesn't know that. This is Hamlin rule with the flute all over again. There is no reason why these sights and sounds should be whittling away at Steve's will. And even if Dante/Franz was using something stronger, agents like him are supposed to be trained to resist conditioning. But Franz is a master of mesmerism, whatever that means. So because it's him, it works. So there. However it works, Steve is frozen in place. The combination of a snow globe and a metronome is too much for him. Franz takes a moment to wallow in self-pity.
Who but I know what real pain is?
Yes, because he's the first person ever to lose a hand or other appendage. He gives the lieutenant his instructions.
In precisely 33 minutes, you will set off a lapdog missile. At that time, the Z-400 will be off the screens, testing its anti-surveillance equipment. And it won't come back.
Yes. My help is invaluable.
He sends everyone but Steve away, then takes the bus and prepares to make his escape. Yeah, that shouldn't be happening because the band isn't on board yet. They're playing in the club. Steve isn't there and he's 15 minutes late. She puts it all together. On the bus, Steve is trying to fight the metronome.
The sound of a bell seemed to snap him out of it.
There's that little gong that Dante was using earlier. You could try that. Diana transforms and heads after the bus.
Wonder Woman. Well, this ought to give you a workout.
What, your bus doesn't have one? And it won't help. She takes a shortcut across a couple of rooftops and heads him off. Franz kept the pedal to the floor, and eventually Wonder Woman passed out from smoke inhalation. Neither Franz nor Steve was ever seen again. He grabs Dante just as Wonder Woman gets to the door.
Wonder Woman, just in time.
Just in time to get a few answers, Dante. How do you plan to destroy Z-400?
With a lapdog missile.
I knew it. Who are you getting to do your dirty work this time?
Lieutenant Stonehouse. From the launch control facility, south of the base.
She takes off, hoping to get there before Shavetail fires the missile. It's going to be close.
Stonehouse. Another security check, Lieutenant.
Oh, a little more than that, Captain. Sergeant, move down the stairs. Keep your hand away from that gun.
He disarms everyone, then steps over to the console. She didn't make it. She pops into the room and disarms Lieutenant Stonehouse, which isn't difficult because he's basically a computer at the C-prompt now, awaiting instructions.
If I can only divert it.
This is Zebra 400 calling San Remo. There's a bogey at 6 o'clock, coming at us fast.
Come on, baby. React.
In the end, Wonder Woman didn't save the day. A nameless technician did. Nice. The missile explodes harmlessly in the ocean, except for all the marine life that it just blew to bits. But we were still figuring out how important those critters are, and how stupid we are to fish and hunt them to extinction. With Otto Franz safely in prison, both Alan and Lieutenant Stonehouse are going to be fine. I really wonder why we keep coming back to this subject. We've seen at least 3 variations on it, and it's getting predictable. Plus, I just cannot buy the way Dante was able to mesmerize somebody like Steve that easily. It doesn't work like that. Having just one of the guys make the big play to save the game kind of makes up for it. There wasn't a whole lot for Wonder Woman to do this time around. Had she just been Diana, she could have informed security and they could have stopped the bus with spike strips. It was more about Diana Prince, agent and detective, than it was about Wonder Woman superhero. And that's why I can't dislike it. We're developing Diana as a person and not just as a container for Wonder Woman. Our characters are 3-dimensional. If there's a character here that's kind of close to being 2-dimensional, it's Wonder Woman. We haven't heard anything about her mother or Paradise Island for a very long time. She appears when she's needed and disappears when she's not. In the first season, we had her interacting with other people, especially people like Hippolyta and Drusilla, but also Steve. Since the season pilot, she hasn't really done that. We spent all our time on Diana. I like learning more about Ms. Prince, but it's about time for a little balance. I guess we'll see if it happens. I'm Irving, and you are now exiting Cartertopia.